Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. So excited to be having everyone here finally. Let's talk some Broncos. Let's talk some Russell Wilson. This is frankly, it might be the biggest bit of news since the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson, or at least since they traded for Sean Payton. This is a huge day in the franchise's history, one way or the other. It's going to turn out really well, or it's going to turn out bad. We'll see. It's something we've been talking about for a while on this show. So I thought, what better way than to hop on with you guys? I've seen a lot of lingering questions on Twitter today, stuff we've addressed before. So I thought, what better way to discuss this than have a little Q&A session with all of you. If you are watching on Twitter, if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to leave your questions below. You can comment and I'll try to respond to them as we get into it here. If you are watching on Twitter, please head over to the YouTube. That helps us out. And we do a lot of other cool stuff on the YouTube. So that would be much appreciated. Excuse me, everybody. Just trying to run some stuff on the back end. Normally I have Joey and Bree to vamp for time for me, but let's just get right into it. The Russell Wilson deal is a rough one. And that's why the Broncos have decided to get out of it. More specifically, here, I think it's March 14th or 15th, Russell Wilson would have had his 2025 salary become fully guaranteed. Now, it was already mostly guaranteed. Want to get that out there. But they would have had, I think, an extra $17, $18 million accelerated onto that had he remained on the roster past March 15th. So they kind of have to make a move on him this offseason. That's the 2025 salary becoming fully guaranteed. So it's a few years out. They don't really want that long-term commitment with Russ. So that's why we're seeing this move happen now. As for why is the benching, happening now? That's because Russell Wilson has an injury guarantee in his contract. If he were to get injured during this season, that same 2025 salary becomes fully guaranteed. Becomes fully guaranteed. And then a $4 million, which really isn't that meaningful. Wow, this is really interesting. Sorry, Joey popped up in the comments. I'll get to this in a second. $4 million of injury guarantee would have come into play in 2026. As you can see, Joey commenting here below. Let me get it on the stream, as is Strez. The Jordan Schultz report that just dropped is extremely interesting for those of you that are with us. Jordan Schultz just reported to Bleacher Report that the Broncos, I'm assuming this is Sean Payton when it says the Broncos threatened to bench Russell Wilson weeks ago if he didn't remove his injury guarantees. Russell Wilson's benching by the Broncos today is solely financially related and has been in the works for weeks, per multiple sources with direct access to the situation. The Broncos approached Wilson 2 days after their October 29th upset win over the Chiefs and told him he would be made inactive for the rest of the season if he did not adjust his contract and defer the injury guarantee trigger date that he has for 2025. Wilson has $37 million in injury guarantees. That's what we were just talking about for 2025. That will become guaranteed no matter what on the 5th day of the 2024 league year in March. Okay, so I had my decimals mixed up. It's $37 million. That would be added. At that time, Wilson was coming off a 3-touchdown game, blah, 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 blah. The issue remained, but the Broncos stuck with him. When the threat was made by the Broncos, the team, Wilson's camp, the NFLPA, and another unknown party were involved in negotiations that ended with no change in Wilson's contract. So I think that's pretty telling, honestly. I think that tells me they're not going to restructure from this point out. There's been a lot of talk. What about if Russ restructures? Could that change things? Sounds like there were a month of negotiations, 2 months of negotiations. What they said, October 29th. So 2 months of negotiations that ended in no change. And I don't blame Russ for that. For Russ to have made a meaningful change that would really change the Broncos' thought process here, he'd have to give back like $30-40 million. And he would have to also forego the Broncos moving on from him. If they cut him here, he's going to get all this dead money, right? And then he's going to be on the open market where he's going to sign. He's still good enough to be an NFL starting quarterback. He's going to sign a new contract that's going to pay him upwards of $20 million a year. So you're asking him to turn down 40 mil, or not even turn down, give back $40 million and turn down the opportunity to make 20 million annually on top of that. I don't think it's very likely. This, I think, sets that in stone. Joey's asking, do you think this means the plan was always to cut Russ? I don't think that means the plan was always to cut Russ. I think once they were 1-5 or 1-4 or whatever, at that point, the plan was to cut Russ. I am surprised it happened after that Chiefs game, because it does feel like the Broncos made some changes in their thought process. It seemed like Jerry Jeudy was definitely gone. They upset the Chiefs. Jerry Jeudy winds up staying. As Joey and I have debated on this very show, I think that's because they didn't want to damage like the locker room culture. Now, maybe what they were trying to do with Russ was a similar. I mean, I could see how that could align. Maybe you don't want to bench him. You realize the risk of playing him and how that could be debilitating to the franchise. But you also want to try and play him. So to, again, try and keep the good vibes going. So maybe that's why you approach him about this deal right after the Chiefs game. Really interesting. I do not think the plan was always to cut Russ. I think Sean Payton was very confident in his ability to make Russ a top 10 quarterback again, and he was wrong. And I do think he did what he could. I think that's where I differ from other people. But it's limited at this point. It's not much there. I believe Russ has has ties to Russell Wilson's camp. Wasn't he the one listing the teams Wilson would waive his no trade clause for? Yes, that was him. He was involved when Russell Wilson was getting out of Seattle, reporting a lot of things there. This is probably coming from Wilson's camp. Which makes sense. I feel like this makes this favor. I don't know who it really favors, but I do feel it favors Wilson a little more than the Broncos. This is the Broncos failing to pull off a negotiation. Though you could argue it makes Russ look like he's not playing ball, and it makes, maybe it justifies the Broncos decision. I'm not sure who is leaking this. Normally you can tell, but it's very possible. Schultz absolutely has ties to the Russell Wilson camp, has broken Wilson stories before. Easily could be coming from that end. He's broken Broncos stories before too, though. And the Broncos have just as much motivation to leak this, in my opinion. Okay, let's get back into the nitty gritty. Please, if you have any questions, drop them below. I'll try and respond to them as I see them coming up. Jamie Weisner, do you think Denver will cut Russell Wilson? Yes. The news today makes it all but certain. Now, they could also trade him, but let's get into that. When it comes to cutting him, they're going to have two different options on the table. They can do what's called a pre-June cut or a post-June cut. Now, stupid thing about that title has nothing to do, or it has a little, but for the sake of our conversation, really doesn't have much to do with when the player is cut. So I talked about that March 15th guarantee date. He has to be off the roster by March 15th. But you can still do a post-June cut and have him off the roster by March 15th. Makes no sense. I totally understand. I didn't name the things, but this is how it works. You can do a post-June designation, works exactly the same as a post-June cut. But they're off your roster before June. Again, very weird stuff. I expect that's what the Broncos will do, because I think it's a little easier to manage the dead cap hits. Now, a post-June cut allows you to spread dead cap hits over 2 seasons. A pre-June cut, you have to eat it all in one season. So Russell Wilson has $85 million in dead cap left on his deal. Dead cap is money that's been given to the player, but the salary cap hasn't accounted for it yet. So again, Russ already has this money. But because, signing bonuses are huge in the NFL. They're like $100 million. To make those more manageable for teams, NFL allows bonuses and guarantees to be spread over the lifetime of the deal. All right, so that's the dead cap, 85 mil in dead cap. Pre-June cut, they cut them. All 85 mil of that is hitting their books all at once. If they do a post-June cut, it's going to be split into $35.4 million in 2024 and $49.6 million in 2025. And that's a huge difference. I mean, again, scary big numbers. I get it. But they are already set to pay Russell Wilson $35.4 million in 2024 if he remained on the roster. So same exact number. They have already budgeted to give Russell Wilson this portion of their salary cap. Not getting blindsided, not going to have to cut Justin Simmons to make this work. They have already budgeted for this cap hit. It's on their books, accounted for. And then in 2025, they're going to free up $6 million with that post-June number. So again, let's back to pre-June. 85 mil all in one season. What does that mean? It means the Denver Broncos would be $68 million over the 2024 salary cap. And that's a very rough place to be because they don't have last year, they had a lot of mechanisms to save money. This year, they have a lot fewer mechanisms to free up salary cap space. You're going to be looking at a DJ Jones cut. You're going to be looking at a Tim Patrick cut. You're going to be looking at a Jerry Jeudy trade, and you're going to be looking at a Courtland Sutton restructure. Now, again, restructures generally aren't taking money off the table for the player. It's taking, again, we talked about what dead cap and how all that worked. You're taking the salary and you're turning it into bonus or guarantees, allowing you to spread some of the cap you were going to give the player in 2024, let's say, over 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027. Kind of just spreading that out a little bit, kind of how it works. But you're not taking money. So I think Sutton would be more than happy to hear about a restructure. Sutton also looks so great this year. I'm more than happy to restructure him. Restructuring ups your long-term commitment to a player. I'm happy with Sutton being in Denver for a while. I'm happy upping that long-term commitment. So I think that's when we'd see Jones and Tim Patrick cuts. I think are no-brainers. They're really the only and the Jeudy trade. Those are the only three moves this team has that frees up $10 million this year. And if you're trying to get to 68 million, really more like 70, 80, because you do need some spending money to do something with. You need to make those big moves. Even if the Broncos do a post-June deal and the cap hits are more manageable, I think you are going to see them move on from DJ Jones. He's been disappointing this year. They can free up $10 million exactly by doing that. Tim Patrick, awesome player. I think there's a very good chance he's back in Denver next year. There is no chance he's back on that $16 million cap hit. They can free up $10 million by moving on from him. He will sign for nowhere near that on the open market. So I think we see some sort of deal broached there. I wouldn't be surprised if Tim Patrick comes back. I think everyone loves Tim Patrick, but ACL, Achilles, back-to-back seasons with a big cap hit that is avoidable. That's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the situation. All right. So you got all those. And then they're also going to have to, this is again, assuming they do a pre-June cut, they would then also have to trade or cut both Justin Simmons and Garrett Bowles. And we still haven't broke even yet. All those so they do a pre-June cut, let's pretend. And then they cut DJ Jones, Tim Patrick. They trade Jerry Jeudy. That's 13 mil, by the way, on Jeudy. They trade Jerry Jeudy. They restructure Courtland Sutton. That's another $6 million. They trade Simmons and Bowles. That's like 30 in total for Simmons and Bowles combined. They would still be 12 mil in the red. So they still wouldn't even have a legal roster. They get rid of DJ Jones, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Garrett Bowles. I guess they're keeping Courtland Sutton, but they restructure Courtland Sutton, get rid of the other four. That's not a legal NFL roster. They're still way over the cap. So at that point, you're looking at also what else here? Cutting Alex Singleton, cutting Jarrett Stidham, cutting Samaje Perine, cutting Chris Manhertz, and cutting Tremont Smith. I know people will go, well, I don't want to cut Perine. He's maybe the team's best running back. And I agree. But again, the Broncos have so few. This is what I meant when they have so few mechanisms. They don't have many players with big contracts that you can manipulate. Like they've got the Zach Allen deal, the Mike McGlinchey deal, the Ben Powers deal. There's no real way to save money in those deals outside of restructuring. And I think the team probably doesn't feel great about restructuring any of those options right now, outside of maybe Allen or Powers. But even then, I think that's a little dodgy. So then you're going to be looking at, all those cuts. It's rough. You have to do all that. That would give the Broncos $18 million to fill out the rest of their roster. They would have no ability to sign exiting free agents. Their starting center, Lloyd Cushenberry, PJ Locke, all those guys. They've got some good ones who would be out the door. Would have no ability to re-sign them. And then you have $18 million to find 2 quarterbacks, a left tackle, 1 to 2 wide receivers, a starting safety, a starting defensive lineman, and some role players. That's tough. That's going to be real tough to do. Not impossible. That's going to be really tough to do. So again, that's awful, ugly, gross. I want to be very clear. That's the bad option. Here's the good option. Post-June cut. Doesn't hurt the Broncos at all this year. Saves them $6 million next year. Saves them an additional $35 million in 2026. Post-June, you're looking at losing $50 million this year, freeing up 50 next year. You're really just moving that 50 million around. And then again, you'd have the 35.2 in 2026. Considering the Broncos are set to have $100 million in cap space next year, and they're already 18 million in the red this year, and you have $50 million you can move around, where would you put that money? I think the Broncos are likely to put that money this year where they're already 18 million over. They need that 50 million now. They don't necessarily need that 50 million next year when they already have $110 million of cap space. So post-June cut, 35.4 mil this year, 49.6 M this next year. Again, that is breaking even this year, saving 6 mil in 2025. To get back to even there, a lot easier. You do the court restructure, that's 6 million. You do the DJ Jones cut, that's 10 million. You do the Uwazurike cut, that's one that should also be mentioned. That's there's always money in the banana stand. Uwazurike is on a $1 million deal. The Broncos will cut and fully remove from their books this offseason. So whenever you're seeing Broncos cap space numbers, you can add $1 million to it just about all the time. Excuse me. So you restructure cut. Oh my goodness. You restructure court. You cut Tim Patrick. You cut Uwazurike. You break even. As you can see, that's way more appealing than having to cut DJ Jones, Tim Patrick, trade Jerry Jeudy, restructure court, trade or cut both Simmons and Bowles, cut Singleton, Stidham, P. Ryan, Manhurts, and Tremont Smith. Pre-June cut, you have to do all that to get to even. Post-June cut, we're looking at the court restructure, DJ Jones, Tim Patrick, Uwazurike. You're done. You throw a Jeudy in there, you're 22 million in the green. You got tons of money. You can sign Lloyd Cushenberry back. You can sign PJ Locke back. You can probably sign a free agent or two. And then again, there's additional avenues for money. You could still cut Stidham, P. Ryan, Manhurts, Smith, or Singleton, get a little more money if they wanted. So that's kind of the breakdown. The players they might cut, why I think a post-June breakup is way better than a pre-June breakup. One other note, and then I'll start going through y'all's questions. Again, I appreciate the questions. As you can tell, I'm just scrambled as is, so I want to go through my bullet points here. Trade. Could Russell Wilson be traded? Absolutely. The more and more I look at the numbers here, the more and more likely I think it is. I think it makes a lot of sense. TW, I think DJ Jones is almost definitely cut. There is absolutely a chance he's back. I'd say 80-20. He's probably gone. 70-30. He's probably gone. but trades absolutely on the table. So that 85 mil dead cap number, that's with a Russ cut. It's 85 million, whether it's post-June, pre-June, it just depends how you're splitting it up. Again, pre-June, no split. Post-June, you get to split it into 2 years. With a trade, it drops to 68 million. So with a trade, you're getting $18 million in your pocket right away. Awesome. Love it. Love it. $18 million. And then let's say you get a 4th round pick. Maybe maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's a 7th round pick. Maybe you give back a 7th round pick. Even in that world, okay, you're trading a 7th round pick for $18 million because Russ is already off the roster. I don't even worry about that in the trade. You're trading a 7th round pick for $18 million in cap space as a team in need of cap space. That's a damn good trade. That's a damn good trade. And if you're the team acquiring Russell Wilson, you don't have to worry about really the downside. The reason the Broncos want to get rid of Russell Wilson, again, the big 2025 guarantees, really, that's it. His big 2025 salary and his big 2025 guarantees. Well, as part of that trade, they're eating $68 million of that cap. And what is left for the team that acquires Russ is going to be $54 million over the next 2 years. 27, like that's a very different conversation than the one the Broncos are having about Russell Wilson. The Broncos are debating, do you want to have Russell Wilson at $55 million a year? A team that is trading for Russell Wilson is having the debate, do we want to have Russell Wilson at $27 million a year? What's the significance of that number? Where does that align with the quarterback market these days? Like Jimmy G, right? It's like Jimmy G money. It's like Geno Smith money. I don't know. That seems, from what I saw from Russ this year, and I'm not a Russ believer, but a Jimmy G contract, if I'm a team that, I don't know, just wants a stopgap option, wants to be like, I don't know, maybe the Steelers, they feel good about their roster. They want to try and throw a win now option in there. Maybe the Bucks, if Baker leaves. I think that's totally fair for Russ. I don't know how high your ceiling is with Russ at quarterback, but I think that's absolutely his market value. And if you're a team that's quarterback needy, you're going, hey, we can get Russell Wilson in a 7th round pick, and that contract Russ is on is 27 a year for the next 2 years, and then we can totally get out of it with like no strings attached. I would do that. Absolutely. I guess it's not no strings attached. You'd have a 30 million dead cap 2026, which is a problem. And maybe they asked Denver to eat more of that cap hit. But Denver, sorry, I'm using my abbreviations. I'm too used to typing on Twitter. At that point, Denver's already $18 million in the positive. They can negotiate a bit of a haircut. Maybe they eat 10 million of that. And instead of giving up a 7th, they get a 5th back. You know, like that's the stuff that happens in these trades all the time. Look at Von Miller. Broncos fans will be familiar with Von Miller. You got a 2nd and a 3rd round pick in that deal. That 3rd round pick was for eating a portion of the dead cap. Let me start going through your, so yeah, the trade, the one problem there is Russ would have to waive his no trade clause. He has a no trade clause on his contract. Again, I think there's a good reason for him to do that. I talked about, having to give back money. He wouldn't have to give back money, but he would have to forgo his opportunity to negotiate a new deal on top of his pre-existing one with the Broncos, which again is probably what, 20, 25 a year. That's a lot to forego. I think the trade would have to be to a landing spot he would really want to go. Outside of that, I think it makes sense for all sides. The last thing I'll say there, I threw out that $60 million number. They could do a post-June trade. That's also a thing. You can do it with designations too. It's weird. I'm sorry for the labels of these things. But if you do a post-June trade in March, weird, I know. $18.4 million dead cap hit in 2024. Still that 49.6, exact same number with a cut in 2025. But you are making 2024 a lot easier on you. I talked earlier about how with a post-June cut, you're looking at a Cortland Sutton restructure, a Tim Patrick cut, and an Uwazurike cut to break even. If you're able to trade Russ, you break even right there. The Broncos are currently $18 million in the red. You trade Russ right now, that's 17 mil. So I guess what? You're still 1 million in the red. Cut Uwazurike 2, problem solved. Problem solved. And then everything else is just get extra money to help rebuild this roster. So I think a trade would be very appealing to the Broncos. I think it'd be appealing to whatever team acquired Russ. Might not be appealing to Russell Wilson, and he has a no trade clause. So that's the big variable to think about there. All right, I'll start diving into your questions now, everybody. Thank you for being patient with me. Awesome to see you live. What should we do at the draft? Says Light Kari. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. 09 from Germany. Thank you, Broncos fan from Germany. Glad you're watching. Hope you're still around. My dream situation would be drafting their quarterback of the future in round 1. I think they're currently slated to pick 13th, 14th. I don't know how likely that is at that spot. I think JJ McCarthy's on the board there probably. I doubt the top 3, those being Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. I doubt those 3 would be there. I'd love to trade up for Jaden Daniels. I understand the Broncos are low on capital and it's a gamble. And I'm going to be like biting my lip when I do it. I'm going to be stressed. But if you think Jaden Daniels is the guy, I think that's the type of quarterback prospect that's going to go in the 5 to 7 range, 5 to 10 range. It shouldn't be that expensive to hop up into that 5 to 10 range to get him. I would absolutely pull the trigger on that. I think he'd be a great fit for the Peyton offense. I think we've seen him be a pretty, intelligent decision maker, good, like true quarterback, and can also run. I've had too many replies like he's a running guy and that doesn't fit Sean Payton. And I would disagree. I think he's more than adept at passing the ball. I've got no concerns there. He's got a plenty strong arm. I think he's a good decision maker. I think he reads and sees the field well. I think we've seen noticeable growth there from him year over year, which I also like to see. And I don't know, Sean Payton started Taysom Hill for several games at quarterback and had a good offense. That guy can't throw the ball. I'm not worried about Sean Payton with a running quarterback. I'm not. So that's what I would like to see. I think, if they decide the quarterbacks aren't for them, I'd want to see them trade back. They need some capital. They've got holes all over the roster. And although quarterback is the biggest one, can't forget that just about every position group on this roster could use a talent infusion of some sort. If they're not going for the quarterback, I'd be looking for a trade down. Try and pick up a 2nd round pick because this team currently doesn't have one. Talking about the Jordan Schultz report again, that is very crazy news. Do you think Denver will cut Russell Wilson? Yes, I do. Could the Broncos draft a quarterback? Absolutely. I think it's very likely. I think JJ McCarthy and Jaden Daniels are the 2 names I'd be circling right now. I'm not convinced Nix or Penix are 1st round quarterbacks. Haven't studied them too closely, but from what I've seen, I wouldn't take him in the 1st round personally. And then May and Caleb Williams are almost definitely picks 1, pick 2. Yeah. So I think Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, I'd be circling those names if we're talking 1st round. Mid-round targets, I've heard them connected to Spencer Pratt multiple times. That might be a name to watch. But I think they almost certainly draft a guy. Take a mid-round flyer, kind of like we've seen, like the Titans do with Malik Willis and Will Levis. Roll the dice, see if you got anything. If you don't, fine, move on, draft your guy in 2025. But I think they'll at least roll the dice, even if it's like a 4th round pick. That is kind of a shot in the dark. I think they draft a quarterback this year. Was the 5-game win streak worth it? Could have traded players to help build up the draft capital. This is a tough one. This is one I debate with Joey frequently. I think it was worth it. I think the Broncos have been one of the NFL's most embarrassing franchises, really since 2017, I think is when it got embarrassing, but you could even say 2016 and the statement would ring true. Only the Jets have a longer playoff drought than them. Like, yikes. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't pop an Achilles this year, maybe the Broncos have the longest drought in the NFL. And they need the capital. They need the capital. They need a higher pick so that they could maybe get a quarterback, so that they could maybe get a premium player. Like I just said, every position group on this roster is in some way pretty flawed and could use a pretty serious infusion of talent. I don't know. I think the winning matters. And like, I'm Mr. Stats, I'm Mr. Data. And this is not the type of argument I typically appeal to, but I think it matters. I think if you beat the Chiefs, and then you trade Judy for that 3rd and a 5th round pick the next day, I think that's a no-brainer move on paper. I wonder the damage it does to the locker room, and if the vibes, the feelings are as good in Denver now, or if they would have been as good as they are now. I guess I kind of think no. And I kind of think Sean Payton showing the team like, hey, I am going to fix things. I am going to get this ship headed in the right direction. 1-5, and we can turn it around. We can keep going. I think that bought him a lot of buy-in. And I've never coached, been a head coach. They always talk about buy-in and how important that is. So I don't know. I think that's pretty good. More dead cap money than the 2 highest dead cap hits in NFL history combined. Yeesh. Yep. It's ugly. I would be looking at George Payton. That investment they made. And I think, you could thumb your nose at the contract, but that contract is getting signed the moment, and not literally, but that contract is going to happen the moment the trade happens. Like, it's cemented. Who knows when but that contract was coming. Like, look at the Jamal Adams contract. That was a ridiculous contract for him, but it was coming because the trade happened. And I don't know. That deal was always coming. It's bad. And I don't know. George Payton is the one I would be blaming for that. Simmons, I don't think they'll do anything with Simmons. I think you could see a re-signing. Earlier on Twitter, I was talking about a Simmons restructure. I had my years off. Last year, they were able to restructure Simmons. This year, they'll no longer be able to. So again, we talked about restructuring. What you're doing, you're taking salary, you're turning it into bonuses, guarantees. That allows you to spread it over the lifetime of the deal. So let's say I take $10 from that Russ was supposed to make in 2024. I restructure it over the rest of his deal, and now he's making $2.50 of that $10. He's making $2.50 in 2024, $2.50 in 2025, and so on, 2026, 2027. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. Simmons. This is the last year of his deal, so they can't push that money out into the future anymore. There's no room to restructure that money out too. So they could extend him. And when you extend a player, you can, again, kind of manipulate the cap stuff, turn some money into guarantees, push it out into the future. But that's the only thing we'll see happen with Simmons. I'd be very surprised if they were to cut or trade him, unless, again, they do a pre-June cut. If they do a pre-June cut, which is unlikely, but it is possible, if they do a pre-June cut, they will be forced to cut Justin Simmons. There's really no other way to make the math work. Same with Garrett Bowles. Same with DJ Jones, Tim Patrick. With a post-June cut, they can kind of have options. They can pick and choose who they want. With a pre-June cut, you got to cut them all, because that's the only way to get under the NFL salary cap at that point. Cut Javonte Williams, I'd be surprised. When I was doing the cap calculations, he actually does have one of the larger 2025 cap hits. It's like $2 million. I'd be very surprised. He's 1 year removed from like devastating knee injury, and the fact he even got back onto the field this year is pretty impressive. I think they're going to wait and see, what's coming next year. What does he look like next year? And if it's more of the same next year, I unfortunately think we'll be having that conversation summer 2025. I don't think we're at that point yet with Javonte. I would be very surprised if he's not a Bronco in 2024. Just wonder how long and how significant this deal break will be for us. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm sorry. Re-ask your question and I'll try and get back to it. How long and how significant? I mean, I'll try and answer what I think you're asking. By moving off of Russ now, they're going to save like $50 million over 3 years. So I think that's pretty nice. And talk about those mechanisms. That's like the Broncos have 2 moves that are, or 3 moves that are worth $10 million. This would be making a $17 million cut to your salary cap every year for the next 3 years. So it's very beneficial in terms of freeing up money. It wouldn't hit 17 every single year, but just if you average it out. So, you know, I think that's fairly significant. I also think more significantly, you get to start the rebuild now. As long as Russell Wilson, a quarterback you're giving an elite quarterback to and traded several premium picks to, is your starting quarterback, you are pursuing a Super Bowl. That's what that trade says and what the contract says. It is, you are a win now team. You're not a rebuilding team. You are trying to win football games right now. And the Broncos free agency moves last offseason demonstrate as much. They're trying to win, as long as Russ is the starter, they were trying to win games right now. I don't think that's where this roster should be. I think they should be trying to rebuild. And that would have been very hard to do with Russ, not only politically, but again, you'd have $50 million fewer dollars to work with over 3 years. And again, those 3 years, it's lingering for a while. It's weighing you down for a while. It does no good to cut Russell Wilson if it hurts your salary cap. I'd agree. That's why it help. Why they're doing it, because it helps the salary cap. You know, they wouldn't be doing this to hurt the salary cap. That's Russell Wilson isn't so bad that he's worth hurting, like tanking the salary cap to get rid of. This move is to help the salary cap because it's understanding Russ was set to be guaranteed an elite quarterback contract, and that would have done immense damage to the salary cap. Wow. Is this a real quote, Joey? I want to make sure that Joey's typing this. It feels like this might be a real quote. Reporter Sean, it looks like Russell is getting too much of the blame. Peyton, I can't replace the entire offensive line. I can't bring in 5 new receivers. Whoa, that is telling. That is very telling. I again, sorry, I've been live on here with you guys. I'm going to look into the validity of that quote. If that is a real quote, that is bonkers. That shows that I think Sean Payton was pretty done with Russell Wilson. When would post-June cut have to be done? It have to be done before March 15th. Again, I know this is weird. It gets a lot of people tripped up because the NFL has done a very poor job naming these things. They would give the post-June designation sometime in March. A little funky element of this would be that the $6 million they would be freeing up in 2025. That wouldn't hit their books until June of 2025. So they wouldn't have that $6 million to play with in free agency. I think that's fine. That $6 million is not going to really move the needle for you that much in free agency. Especially in contrast to what going $70 million over the cap right now would do to you. Like, that's damaging. Not having $6 million March of 2025, that's fine. You'll be okay. Bringing DJ Jones back, saw that. No. Cutting Javonte Williams is a bad idea. It starts with the line, most of all the right side. I don't disagree. I think line is a problem, specifically McGlinchey. Looking at his contract, he is on the Broncos for 2024, and here, maybe I can pull up my calculator. I think maybe even through 2025. Yeah, okay. They can get rid of him in 2020 after next season, but even then it's going to be painful. Not this offseason. This offseason not happening for McGlinchey. Let's see. I know it's a bad idea. That's why I'm asking. Could you trade Russell Wilson for a quarterback? Yeah, you could trade him for anyone. I don't know what team would do that. Like maybe the Cardinals, if they were done with Kyler, but that like both teams are just like neither team would be saving money because they're like eating all this dead cap and then taking on like half of a big contract. It'd pretty much be the same as just having that huge contract on your books. So I don't think that would make sense. Rules wise, yeah, they totally can. I don't know who would do that. Like maybe the Patriots for like Mac Jones, if the Broncos wanted like a Mac Jones reclamation project thing. And the Patriots new regime really liked Russ. I think you could like maybe. Steelers, maybe similar thing with like Kenny Pickett if they're done there. But that's it. Like it would be very weird. Could they do it? Yes. Will they do it? I'd be very surprised. So with the post June 1st designation, what is the benefit to cutting Russ? What are the total savings for each season? The benefit for cutting Russ, again, you're getting about $50 million over the 3-year period in total. Most of that's going to be coming in 2026. You're getting $6 million of it in 2025. And I think Frankie raises a good point. Like, you know what? Paying Russell Wilson $50 million in 2025 when he's off the roster before the 2024 season, I do not like that. I don't. I do think it's the smartest path forward compared to the alternatives, right? The alternatives are paying him 56 in 2025 and then at least 31 in 2026 as opposed to 35 in 2026 as opposed to 0. So I think like that is nice. It's better than that path. I know Frankie is a proponent of the pre-June cut. I don't know. What would you rather do? Would you rather only save $6 million in 2025? I'll give you your two options here because these are going to be the Broncos' two options. Only save $6 million in 2025, bringing you to $111 in 2025 cap space, or losing $50 million in 2024 to free up $50 million in 2025, giving you $56 million or whatever freed up next year. I don't know. I guess to me, the difference between 160 and $111 million in the NFL is so minor. Like, look at the Bears who entered last free agency with over $100 million. You know why they had to overpay TJ Edwards and overpay Tremaine Edmonds, right? Tremaine Edmonds. Do I have the name right there? Yeah. Tremaine Edmonds. It's because they had to get to the salary cap floor. It's because they freed up too much cap space with their hardcore teardown. And then also a problem we're seeing with the Bears now, you need good players. Like, yeah, it's great to tear things down, free up $150 million in cap space. But like, you need good players. You need players to spend cap space on. And the Broncos don't have many, right? You're looking at, again, 111 mil versus 160 million. All right. What checks are you going to have to manage in 2025? Quinn Miners is it. Quinn Miners and then Patrick Surtain's 5th-year option, which like generously will be 20 mil. So let's say that's 20 mil. Let's say Quinn Miners becomes the highest paid guard in the league. That's another 20 mil. All right. Now you have 70 million to work with. And you have like 4-5 players that I think the Broncos might want to sign. Not even might want to sign. And we're talking about like Baron Browning. I think Baron Browning's a good player. Do I think he's going to sign for 5 players, $70 million? Do I think he's going to sign for 14 mil next season? No, I don't see that happening. Even close to it happening. Who else? I know I listed out the other names here. Javonte, like Javonte's not signing for 14 mil. Cooper's not signing for 14 mil. Caden Stearns off of Pateller isn't signing for 14 mil. Brandon Johnson, you might want back. He's not signing for 14 million. Henningsen, and then Henningsen, Wattenberg, Mathis, those are all 2026 guys. The one benefit to George Payton drafting a pretty bad 2022 draft class, the Broncos don't have too many expensive free agents coming up on the books. Surtain and Miners is really it. And then maybe if Cooper, Browning, or Benito take a big leap, maybe they get expensive. But right now they're not expensive. Maybe Dulcich takes a big leap. Maybe he can get expensive, but right now he's not. So again, do you need $120 million to sign Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, Nick Benito, Javonte, Caden Stearns, BJ, that being Brandon Johnson, Dulcich, Henningsen, Wattenberg, and Mathis? Or will 70 mil do? I think 70 million is going to be more than enough. And again, you also have to factor in the cost. So even if you said, screw that, I want 120 mil in 2025. Oh, yeah, fair. Now you have to figure out how you're going to free up $70 million on a roster where only 3 players have potential cap savings of 10 plus mil. Like, you are going to have to, throughout the talk of cutting Russell Wilson, people have said, oh, well, if you cut Russ, you have to gut the roster. That's not true. You don't have to. If you do a pre-June cut, you're going to have to gut the roster. There's just no other way to make the math work. So I just, like, man, you're really bending over backwards and really putting yourself into a corner so that you have like $120 million for Brandon Johnson instead of 70 million. I'm fine with the 70 million there. Does Russ have a no trade clause? Yep. Appreciate you, Mike. Like the stream and subscribe if you're enjoying it. I know this has been a little chaotic. Trying my best to inform you all. This is going to be taking the spot of our Let's Talk Broncos podcast this Wednesday. Joey's dealing with some family stuff. Bree's going to be on Broncos Country tonight, later tonight. Make sure you listen to that. So I thought I'd fold in solo and give you a little Russell Wilson download. Excuse me. Justina Anderson came out with a report that seems to be the Broncos side of the story, pretty much the same as Schultz, though. While I'm talking to you guys, I'll see if I can pull up that Justina Anderson story and get the download there. I absolutely do have to drink some water, though, because I've been talking for 48 straight minutes. Sorry for that, and sorry for the throat noises, but my throat was about to give out on me. Okay, I'll look for that Justina Anderson report. If someone wants to share it in the chat, like even a summary of what she said, that would be super helpful. Penix in the third, I will love, and I think deserve it. Honestly, I would be totally down for a mid-round flyer on Michael Penix. I'm not the biggest believer in him, haven't studied him a ton, but late day 2, early day 3, hey, I'm down. Let's throw some darts. What do you think about trading whatever to the second spot in the draft this year? I think Arizona would be open to it. This should also be on the table. I don't know if the Broncos have a big enough war chest to pull it off. That would be the one thing I would circle for people to watch, because it's going to be expensive to move up from like 12 to 2. It's definitely going to be this year's first, next year's first, probably like next year's second, and then some. So it'd be expensive. I love Drake May, though. I love Caleb Williams. I would absolutely be down for it. I think those guys are extremely talented quarterbacks, and I would love to see it. Joey's saying the Peyton quote is true. In case you missed it earlier, Joey shared a fascinating George Payton quote that was so cutting. I wasn't sure if it was real or not. I can't replace the entire offensive line. I can't bring in 5 new receivers. That's a coach saying it's the quarterback without the coach saying it's the quarterback. All right. Denver can climb to as high as the 7th pick if everything breaks right for them. Thank you, Perrin. That's Perrin Knopfle, Perrenknoepfle. I'm just shouting that out because I know his Twitter handle is the same thing, and I appreciate the info. That's great info there. I've been meaning to calculate that and haven't gotten around to it. Yeah, please hit the like button and subscribers and all that stuff. Really helps out the channel. Comment. Again, thank you everyone for engaging. I'm excited that I have this many live responses to get through. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. And thank you. This is very fun for me, so I enjoy it. Zack, even among all the negatives and dysfunction, it feels pretty good, right? It does. I'm glad to be right on this. I think that's what he's getting at. Or just to be kind of rid of this era. Either way, I'm happy with it. I think the brand of offense we were seeing was pretty unwatchable. I think the quarterback has more to do with that than the offensive play caller. And I care about getting these things right. I work hard at it and don't like being wrong. And happy I can say I was right on this one. Coaches and ownership need to see Stidham on the field. Maybe he is this is from Amy Massey, Massey, I think, maybe Macy. Coaches and ownership need to see Stidham on the field. Maybe he is the future. According to Coach in the preseason, he led fans to believe perhaps Stidham will be that future. I think those quotes had more to do with giving the right answer. You know, like, oh yeah, we think this guy's great. He could totally be the future. Especially because they came in knowing they might have to bench Russ at some point this season for Stidham. You don't want to say, oh, this guy is not the future. And then like bench Russ for him, because we'd all be going, I thought this guy sucked. What are you doing? So I would say that probably has more to do with that. I don't think he's the future. He used to be, I mean, I know at one point he was viewed as like a first round pick in the draft. And then, you know, like dropped to ended up being a 4th round pick. You know, has shown things at points in New England and in Las Vegas. I think he's probably more in that like Josh Dobbs tier, where he's better than the average backup, but probably not good enough to be a starter. That said, I think the Broncos' problems right now offensively they are so predictable. And they are so predictable because they are so limited in the scope of what they're able to do. And I think they're so limited in the scope of what they're able to do because of the quarterback. Also the running back talent and the wide receiver talent too, and the tight end talent. But quarterback's the most important position. So I think switching out Jarrett Stidham, who I don't think he can do it as well as Russell Wilson, but I think he can do more. Maybe that's the spark this team needs. Can knock him out of a funk of predictability. Sean Payton blames Hackett, blames Russell while he keeps making bad calls. What an irresponsible being. Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. I think he could take more responsibility. Is the right word? More responsibility for what the Broncos offense is this year. He's the head coach. He's the offensive play caller. He's either the most important part of that recipe or the second most to the quarterback. So he absolutely should be taking more responsibility. That said, I'm still very happy overall with Sean Payton. That doesn't mean he's infallible. That does not mean I don't think he's done anything wrong. But if I were to like list off reasons why you should be optimistic for the Broncos in 2024 and beyond, Sean Payton would be number one on that list, for me at least. Can they trade Mike McGlinchey? I don't think so, but let me see. I don't want to talk out of my butt on that. Mike McGlinchey, with a trade. Oh, you've got the dead money cap savings wrong. No, they would be eating 14 mil in dead cap. But let me see. Trade. What does that do? Sorry, everybody. Let me just, oh yeah, no, it would free up 4 mil. I think that's pretty unlikely. So can they? Yes, they can. But you are freeing up $4 million and opening up a pretty big hole at starting right tackle. Tackles are one of the highest paid positions in the league. Good job finding, or good luck rather, finding a starting right tackle for $4 million. I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe if you come to the conclusion that Cam Fleming is just straight up better than Mike McGlinchey, and who cares how paltry the cap savings are, he's just better. So hell, $4 million, who cares? Let's just take the $4 million. In that case, maybe you could justify it, but I think it's still pretty unlikely. 50 people watching the stream and 15 likes. Please like the stream. Yes, it's really helpful to all of us. It helps us, get out in front of people. And it takes like 5 seconds, and really helpful. No one's looking at your liked YouTube videos. No one cares. Just do us a solid. Just spitballing, but what exactly would someone need to frame Russell Wilson to void his guarantees? I looked into this last year because it was weirdly common to get that question in regard to what the Broncos could do with Russell Wilson's cap hit. I think there are probably some crimes severe enough where he could be released with cause and would void the guarantee somewhat. I imagine that's very deep in the contract language, though, and definitely is something that's not often discussed. Like when we're breaking the specifics of these deals, it's not available to us on Over the Cap or Spot Rack either. Yeah, I would assume the worst ones. Let's say that the worst ones, the gross ones, the bad ones. If it was really bad, I think something would happen. But if you were to be retired, for example, that would not save the Broncos at all. A lot of people think retiring gets you off the hook. No, because again, dead cap is money you've already paid the player. The salary cap just hasn't accounted for it yet. The salary cap has to account for it at some point. So it'll remove whatever their new salary is from that equation, unless it was fully guaranteed. In which case, because in that case, you've probably already paid it out. It's a mess. Anyways, let's get off that tangent. Should the Broncos be trying to win these last 2 games? I don't think so. I think it's one thing. And again, some people could say I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but I think if they were to start blowing things up right after they upset the Chiefs, that would have been a problem, because all of Sean Payton's messaging, and we saw this in a publicly released video to the team, was like, hey, look at the Lions last year. They were 1-6 and they didn't give up and they kept fighting, and it came through. We're doing the right things. The results just aren't following. And if we keep doing the right things, the results will follow. So you get that win over the Packers. You get the huge upset win over the Chiefs. All of a sudden, the results are coming through. I think it would have been very hard to change directions and go, no, we're actually going to tear it down now. I think that would have been incongruent messaging to the team, and I think that's something that can hurt a head coach. When you're dishonest to your team or giving them inconsistent messaging, I think that's what loses the locker room. Now that they're out of the playoff mix for all intensive purposes, should they be trying to win? No. Try and get as good of a draft pick as possible. Try and get in position for a Jaden Daniels. Or worst case, even if you don't want the quarterback, get a higher draft pick. It's going to be more valuable when you trade back. And as we've said on here already, they need the capital, draft capital, that is. I think maybe Zack Wilson could come to the Broncos. Maybe Hackett look even worse. That'd be very funny. Zack Wilson's probably available this offseason. I'm not jumping for joy if that's the pick, but I could see it. I wouldn't count it out. George Payton, for people that don't know, I'm pretty sure it's been reported that George Payton's number 1 quarterback in the 2021 class was Zack Wilson. So take that for what you will on George Payton. What a great GM. Like, sub, share. Yeah. Thank you everybody for shouting that out in the comments. Really appreciate it. Send Arizona Judy. I think that, again, if we're talking about a move up to 2, very possible. If you're talking about trading Russ somewhere, even though Russ and Judy haven't like worked out well as a combo, I could see Judy being a throw in or like a sweetener. I don't think Judy will get much on his own, but the Broncos stand to gain $13 million by getting rid of him. So I think they're motivated to throw him in to any trade they can find. And sorry, they save $13 million by trading him. Cutting him saves them no money. So it has to be a trade. Hence why I think he'll be available for very, very cheap this offseason. Seems like Gino had a bit of a come down after a surprising season last year. Any chance Seattle would trade for us back? 0.0. That bridge is burned. He said, choose me or choose Pete Carroll, and they chose Pete Carroll. I confirm Zach does not like being wrong. Trust me. Yeah, it's true. I work hard at it. And when I am wrong, I try and change my opinion so I'm right. I like being right on everything. And if I think I'm wrong on something, try and change it, make myself right. Happy to flip-flop. But I'll own it. I will own it if I have to flip-flop on something. Let Russ cook. Yeah. New kid on the way. Lots of at-home cooking that could be done. I think they'd appreciate it. Will our next quarterback be able to see over the O-line? After I already just made a mean joke, I don't want to double down. I'll let Boggins make the mean joke there. You've heard of an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, but what about Mr. Unlimited being offensively limited? That's fun, Team D. I like that one. I'm going to star that comment for you. That's a dang good comment, Team D. Thank you. How much of a chance is there that Drew Brees knew and gave his blessing to this benching? And how funny would that be? God, I guess that comes down to how frequently you think they talk. I'd say, I don't know. I'd say probably not. Mr. Large, what's up, Mr. Large? Good seeing you in the chat again. What was your first reaction when the news broke? If someone told me Russ would be benched December 1st, I would call them crazy. Roller coaster Broncos season as always. Good question. I was, I heard the, it's been, popular TikTok sound recently. I heard the John Lennon, Happy Xmas, parentheticals, war is over, blaring in my ears. Just like, hallelujah, war is over. Yeah, I'm tired of having to argue this point, and I was satisfied to be proven right. Had people on the Broncos beat last year outwardly laughing at me and calling me crazy for saying that the Broncos could cut Russ at some point in the next 2 years. And I was right. And they weren't. Sean Payton is becoming so hated, even in Broncos country. I'm part of the side that thinks he's the right choice. With that said, he needs to go all in on quarterback to save his reputation in 2024. Sean Payton's reputation is not in jeopardy in 2024, I think. Like 2025, 2026, sure. But if they're still without an answer at quarterback in 2024, I'd say that's par for the course. They don't have a lot of capital to make an aggressive move up for a quarterback this year. Again, I think they could. There's a way maybe they could get up for a May or a Daniels, but it's going to be hard to do. There's a very real possibility that it's like JJ McCarthy or bust for them with where they're slated in the draft. I don't think like Sean Payton's reputation lives or dies on making JJ McCarthy work. He's done enough. Are you excited for when we draft Roma Dunzier and drafted tier 2 quarterback in the second after trading Judy in a later pick? I'd be so happy with drafting a wide receiver first, especially when like a Dunzier or a Dunze. I recently heard him say that people were pronouncing his name wrong, but I didn't hear what the correction was to. But RO, the Washington receiver, I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll go initials. What a talent. I mean, freak of nature. Yeah, bring him to Denver. I'd be thrilled. Baller hat. Thank you, Indy. Broncos fans should be loving Peyton. He's willing to make the hard decisions to steer the org in the right direction. I would agree. It was part of the reason I was a big fan of them hiring Sean Payton, is I knew they had hired a head coach that was going to be given the power to evaluate whatever he wanted to at quarterback. Like if the Broncos hired David Culley, who like clearly Houston hired to give zero power and just kind of be a placeholder. If they had hired a quarterback with like that type of bona fides, coach with that type of bona fides, he's not going to have the power to be like, hey, ownership, eat $80 million for me. I need a different quarterback to win. They're going to go, no, you're David Culley. Make it work, or we'll just get a different coach. Sean Payton has the bona fides to be like, you need to eat $80 million so I can make this thing work. So yeah, I think that's very nice to see. How relieved are you, Zach, that you don't have to pretend Russ is a viable quarterback anymore? I wasn't pretending. I think I was maybe being a little political in how fine I thought he was. I think maybe if I had to number them out, and I haven't done this exercise, but I think maybe if I had to number him out, he'd be more like 20th. And to save me some arguments on Twitter, I was saying like 15th. But I think he's viable. I think you just need a very strong run game. His passing game is going to be so high variance. The cool stuff is really cool. Touchdown to Cortland Sutton in the end zone against the Bills. That is the least likely completion in the history of Next Gen Stats. He can pull off some really cool things, bonker stuff. I mean, awesome when it is awesome. But when it's not, it's really, really bad. And as he's aged, the crazy awesome stuff is happening less frequently. And the sacks and the missed receivers and all that is happening more frequently. So I don't know. I think he's viable. I think he just has to go to like if he was in a position as like Ryan Tannehill was in like 2019 or whatever, when Derrick Henry was taking the world by storm, I think that would be a great fit for Russell Wilson at this point in his career. Just about finding that right landing spot. Is Stidham worth starting in fantasy? Had Russell all year. Now I'm in the championship. I mean, if you don't have another option, I think you gotta, but I would be looking at your other options. I think there's got to be other better options on your waiver wire. ESTD. I would not go with Stidham. Watching the Broncos push the Chargers and Raiders up the draft board while also tricking themselves into Stidham would be very Denver. Frankie, don't send us down that rabbit hole, man. Don't send us. That sounds wildly depressing. I can't even think about that. I think Sean knew a lot of those wins on the win streak were because of the defense, but knew he couldn't get away with the benching yet. I'd say that's right. I'd say that's apt, especially look at the Jordan Schultz report. He wanted to bench him after the Chiefs game. That's during that 2-game win streak. It's going to be tough to swing it then. So I think Team D is dead on. If the Broncos would have gone to the playoffs, they would have gotten smoked, probably. I thought Peyton wanted Lance. I believe Lance was his QB3. I think there were 3 quarterbacks he was willing to trade up for, I believe was the report. And it was Lawrence, in order, it was Wilson, Lawrence, Lance. Wilson was his QB1. Again, these are reports that I'm remembering reading from like 2022, I think it was, maybe 2021. Could be wrong. But I believe Zack Wilson was his QB1, Trevor Lawrence was his QB2, and then, Trey Lance was QB3. And those were the 3 he was down to trade up for. Bo Nix. I'm not a Bo Nix guy. I haven't studied him enough yet, though, to like harsh on any or embrace him. I've watched broadcast copies of Bo Nix at this point. Excited to study him more. I'm not a big believer right now, but I haven't seen enough to feel confident in that stance. Sorry, Deep Bronx comment got me. You like Penix or Daniels better? Penix, another one I need to study a little more of. I've only seen one game of his, non-broadcast. So I've only seen one game of his on all 22. I like Daniels better right now. I think Penix is more of a late day 2, early day 3 guy for me. I'd feel comfortable taking Daniels top 10, even if I don't think he's one of the 10 best players in this class. Unpopular opinion, Brissett or a Bridge and McCarthy with no rush to play him. I'm down with it. I think Brissett would upgrade the Broncos quarterback position. I think you do the pre-June cut I was talking about earlier. That gives the Broncos the exact same amount of cap flexibility as they would have had keeping Russell Wilson. In the short term, you're freeing up the long-term flexibility. But anyways, short term, you're not losing any flexibility. You're still able to add players, yada, yada. I think they go that route. You get Brissett on like a 15 AAV contract. He just signed for 10. I don't think that should be that unrealistic. I don't know. I think the offense gets better. Next year. Joey wants to see that Lock Bridgewater camp battle. I see. That's funny. Thoughts on Drew Lock? Man, there's some people watching the stream right now who are ready to see me go off. I think he had a really good end of the game against Philadelphia. And I think everything else we've seen from him suggests he should not be a starting quarterback anytime soon. And then the stuff he did against Philadelphia at the end of that game was really cool. But isn't what I just described kind of the Drew Lock story? You know, he's got like a moment or two that's like, whoa, he can do that. But then other than that, it's like, I don't think this guy's a starting NFL quarterback. Isn't that kind of what it was in Denver? I think that's kind of where it is still now. I wouldn't be super excited about signing him. Sam Darnold, maybe. I don't know. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of him in San Francisco. I thought he looked pretty good against the Ravens the other night. I kind of think I think the Sam Darnold thing is done. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll be surprised at this point if it's not done. Should have never traded for Wilson to begin with, but I hope the go around of recycled quarterbacks ends now. I hope for a first round quarterback. Who you think it's going to be? I think it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. I think it's going to be like Jacoby Brissett and Spencer Pratt or Spencer Pratt type. And by that, I mean like a second, third, fourth round pick at quarterback. Maybe Michael Penix. Totally could be Penix too. Yeah, that's what I think. I think they're going to sign a guy. But then even then, like the money stuff is tough. Like they very easily could, looking at their cap situation, it wouldn't be hard for me to believe if they really like Jaden Daniels and they're looking at their cap situation, it would make a lot of sense to go, let's just trade up for the guy because it's really not that big of a leap to get him. And then you just get your guy. That's probably the two options I think are most likely. I'd say Jaden Daniels, trade up, or like a Jacoby Brissett or like Justin Fields vet signing. Fields is another one I'd watch. I think he's going to get something around a second round pick in compensation. And the reward is very high there. Like most second round quarterbacks do not have the upside of Justin Fields. And he has shown very real signs of growth over the last month or so. I'm not saying they should do it or even they will do it, but I think those are the three names I would be circling right now, plus Jarrett Stidham. I bet it'll be one of Stidham, Fields, Brissett, or Daniels come week one. Let's be real. Russ is not it. We would have won more games with Jared this year for sure. I wouldn't say for sure. I wouldn't say that they definitely wouldn't or win more games or that they definitely lose more games. But I don't think there's anything certain there. I think do I think, the hard decisions I've been making for this team have gone virtually unnoticed for years. Sorry. Do you think Jarrett will be better than Russ? No. I think he'll be a worse quarterback, but a less limited one. And that'll open up some things for the offense. I just think he's not going to be as good at executing on a snap-to-snap basis. Though, like, again, Russ wasn't all that great there. I wouldn't be surprised if it's very comparable or even better. But, like, we had the guy asking about his fantasy lineup. If that's my fantasy team, I'm not starting Jarrett Stidham. If that helps you gauge my thoughts on him, I would not be starting him on my fantasy team whatsoever. No way. but I also will not be surprised if it's a little better. The news on the injury clause is funny. It's a business, right, Zach? Just like Russ isn't going to give the money back to Denver to help out their situation, Broncos don't owe Russ anything. Fully agree. I think it's unfair for fans to expect a player like Russell Wilson to give $40 million back to the Denver Broncos. That's an unfair, unrealistic expectation. I think it's equally unfair and unrealistic to expect the Broncos to risk incurring $40 million of damages on themselves just so they can be nice. Yeah, both of those I think are unrealistic expectations. Yeah, let's not deify the Broncos owe Wilson's money. Totally. Yeah, but that money's getting paid out anyways. It's just to stop them from owing him additional money. Are the Broncos finally going to have a Judy week? Joey says. That's very funny, Joey. No, I don't think so. Odds of Zach, you're muted. Segars is 2024 starting quarterback for us. 0. 2024 record prediction. I'll say 9-8. I think they finish 8-9 this year. I think they are a better team next year that ultimately finishes with a very, very similar record, just because they will get worse turnover luck, would be my guess. Could counter that by saying they probably don't have the worst defense in NFL history for like September. That probably doesn't happen next year, and that probably boosts some wins up. But I don't know. I'm feeling like 9-8 still. I think there's still a team in the middle. Frankie and I were talking about it earlier in the DMs. I know he sees more of a step back. I don't think a step back's necessary for the Broncos, or is necessarily imminent for the Broncos. I don't think Russell Wilson added that much as a quarterback this year that like a Jacoby Brissett won't add himself. And then I think the overall talent outside of the quarterback is going to be better next year. Kyle Trask, hell no. Michael Pratt or Spencer Rattler? Michael Pratt's the name I've heard tied to him. Oh yeah, Spencer Pratt. Spencer Pratt is like a fictional character, I think, or something. Excuse me on all of that. Michael Pratt is who I meant. Goodness, foot in my mouth. Michael Pratt is the name I've heard connected to the Broncos as a mid-round target. And someone told me that recently. I'm not talking about what you told me. I've heard it from other places too. So I don't want anyone getting upset with me for sharing something I shouldn't. I've heard it all over the place. Flacco versus Jets. Geno Smith versus the Steelers. Nick Mullins versus the Pack. Them are the fantasy quarterbacks available. I mean, I'm curious what the chat thinks here. I might roll with Flacco, man. After that Texans game, honestly, all he's done since coming back to Baltimore, I still worry about his ball security. It seemed like he was destined to fumble every 5 dropbacks when he was the Jets quarterback last year. But that hasn't been a problem in Cleveland. Oh, but he's playing the Jets. I didn't piece it together. And then Nick Mullins is playing the Packers, but he throws those crazy interceptions. Geno, maybe? Geno's the best quarterback on that list. But the Steelers defense scares me a little. I'm going Geno. I think Geno's my pick there. Playoffs on the line. Yeah, let's go Geno. Do these 2 years with Denver hurt his chances of getting into Canton? Absolutely, they hurt his chances of getting into Canton. This is going to be brought. And then not only that, but Geno Smith coming up right behind him and looking like a top 15 quarterback. That's going to be brought up when people are voting on this stuff, especially because his counting stats are unimpressive relative to the other quarterbacks of his era, just because he's been in offenses that have consistently run the ball at a higher rate than the rest of the league. So he's not going to really have the counting stats. He's going to have a Super Bowl win. He's going to have 2 conference championships, again, barring something wild happening. And then no counting stats. This is another thing I haven't been saying on Twitter because I haven't wanted all the replies. At this point, I don't know if Russell Wilson is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think there's a very good chance he's not. The quarterback stuff is about to get very crowded with guys like Phillip Rivers struggling to get in, and I just like Eli Manning, and it's gonna get funky. And I think unless the NFL wants to let like 2-3 quarterbacks in a year, some guys are, I kind of, yeah, it really hurt his chances. We'll leave it there. How dare you start the stream before I'm off work? When are y'all going to fit the Discord link? Yeah. You know what, Alex? Need to do that. I'm the only person streaming right now, so I can't do it right now. I'll next stream, Alex. Come back to us Friday. I'll have it fixed for you on Friday. I actually feel so bad for Russ, man. I love him as a person, but I know it's for the best, and I'm aware that he's not what we need to compete against. But man, he really wanted to go into the Hall of Fame as a Bronco. Yeah, I think there are people in the chat that'll list maybe they don't like reasons why maybe they don't like Russ Wilson, or they think Russ Wilson's a questionable person. I think he's a pretty solid guy. I don't think he's maybe as pure as, I don't know, maybe I'm digging myself a little here. I think he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's very nice. He says the right things. He's a good teammate this year, at least. And I think it's fair to feel bad for him. I think the human element of this business can suck at times, but view it this way. If you're feeling bad about Russ, this whole thing stands to make him millions and millions more than otherwise. So, hey, because he's going to get a second contract on top of what the Broncos are paying him. So not too bad. Not too bad. Share the details on the Jordan Schultz appearance. If you see him, who would you like to see at center next season? God, I'm not going to be able to get through all these. I got to start going fast. Who would I like to see at center next season? Cush. Cush has been great. I'd absolutely, yeah. Cush is who I'd want to see at center. I think he took a big step. I think he's grown year over year. And in past years, it wasn't enough. And this year it's become enough. He's a plus center to me. And again, the fact we have seen year over year growth from him makes me optimistic that that'll continue. Is it wrong to think he should give money back? Doesn't he use his charity? Okay, I'm not talking about that. I didn't read that one all the way through. Excuse me, everybody. Holy shit, 9-8. I'm telling you, Frankie, I don't see that. I think this team's going to be 8-9 anyways. And I think you get a less limited quarterback. You improve the overall roster talent. You don't have the NFL's worst defense for a month of the season. Hey, +1 win. Why not? Russ likes to spin into pressure. Yeah, he sure does. Jerry's getting traded or released next season. Yep, talked about that. I should be reading the names off here. I'm sorry. There's just so many questions I've been reading. Just the questions. I'm sorry, everybody, who didn't get their name read. Broncos are also stupid. Schultz is a fool. Just said Russ has been one of the premier quarterbacks in the league by almost every single metric. I turned it off. Well, some people, we've been on this stream for a while. I need to hop off soon, everybody, but been on the stream for a while. And people might remember when we were talking about the Schultz report, I was saying, I don't know if this is coming from the Russ camp or the Broncos camp. Seems like it could be coming from either. I'd say it's coming from the Schultz camp, from the Russ camp. I'd say Schultz's report is definitely being fed to him by Russ, if that is what he's saying on TV. Keep an eye out for that stuff, people. You can, when news breaks or is leaked, it is getting broken or leaked for a reason, and it's being told to that insider for a reason. Why? Who's telling it to that insider? What's the reason? What do they have to gain? That often can give you more insight than the report itself. Little tip. So you want to overpay Lloyd and keep the same offensive line together, or just get someone else with more power because you can't run up the middle? I don't think Lloyd's really the problem with them not being able to run up the middle. I think he's been a solid run blocker this year. Yeah, I guess I disagree on your Lloyd Cushenberry evaluation. Would probably be what that comes down to. What's my fave Future song? I mean, like Mask Off immediately comes to mind because I was like in high school. I remember bumping to that. I'm trying to think what else is good. Superhero's been fun. I'll go with those two. Low Life. The one where he disses Russ. Kidding. yeah, appreciate all the people watching. See all 66 of you. Thank you. My goodness, went an hour and a half. This is probably the longest LTB ever. And I did it all by myself. I'm not going to be able to talk tonight. My girlfriend's going to be upset with me. Thank you, everyone. I can't believe I know some of you were in here for the entire hour and a half, and I can't believe you just spent an hour and a half with me. So thank you very, very much. The support means the world to me. It means the world to Joey, it means the world to Bree. We're going to be back with a brand new show Friday, trying to give you guys some seconds here if you got any last questions to fire off. And yeah, thank you all for stopping by. In case we had any people come in late and miss me, give the basic rundown. Do it one more time for you. Options for the Broncos at this point. They're either cutting Russ or they are trading him. That's going to happen with either a pre-June designation or a post-June designation. The cut will happen in March. Dumb, but it'll be done with either a pre-June designation or a post-June designation. Pre-June, you're eating it all in one. Post-June, splitting it among 2 years. Pros and cons of that. Pre-June, you're going to have $50 million more to work with in 2025 if you go about your business that way, which is pretty sweet. It definitely would help a rebuild. You're going to be probably re-signing Surtain. Now the cap hits won't go into effect until 2026. But you're going to be re-signing Surtain to a new deal that year. Minor's new deal will start going into effect in 2025. So having some extra money, it might be nice. I think you have more than enough already, but it might be nice. Post-June cut, right? Split it into two. Pre-June, the downside there, you are going to have to move on from DJ Jones, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Justin Simmons, and Garrett Bowles, as well as Alex Singleton, Jarrett Stidham, Samaje Perine, Chris Manhertz, and Tremont Smith. And even after doing all of that, you're only going to have $18 million, and you're going to have to sign with that $18 million, 2 quarterbacks, a left tackle, a couple wide receivers, a safety, a starting interior defensive lineman, and a center, because you won't be re-signing Kutch in this world. You're also losing PJ Locke. So you're losing Simmons, PJ Locke, and Kareem Jackson in this world. You probably need more than one safety. And you only have $18 million to sign those like 9-ish spots. So tough, dicey. And again, then you need extra money left over. No team is like getting down to zero in cap space because you need cap space to make in-season moves. Post-June, that's going to be a $35.4 million dead cap split in 2024, 49.6 in 2025. That means you are not escalating any Russell Wilson cap hits this season. It's staying the exact same as it once was. You're saving $6 million in 2025. You're saving like $35 million in 2026. So that's that pretty much. It's a lot easier to manage. I think that's the upside there. You're not going to have to gut the roster to survive. You're going to have to cut like Tim Patrick, and then like trade Jerry Jeudy, or you could cut Tim Patrick, restructure Cortland Sutton, and cut Uwazurike. Moves they're going to do anyways would get you where you need to be. So that's a benefit there. Downside, instead of having 160 million in 2025 cap space, you'd have 110. Do you need 160 million? I'd say no. Some would say yes. They could also trade him though. Trade makes a lot of sense for the Broncos. It would save them $20 million, and hey, maybe they get something in return as part of that trade. It makes sense for the team acquiring Russ. They'd be getting a solid quarterback at $27 million a year. That seems about what Russ's market value is like. Might not make much sense for Russell Wilson. He could maybe make more money getting the Broncos to cut him and then getting to sign a brand new deal on top of the pre-existing one. And then he'd get to hypothetically pick his landing spot. Because Russ has a no trade clause, it being appealing or not to Russ is very important. Okay, so I think that's the rundown. One last time to close us here. Did I have any questions come in? Cornerback is also a need. Who do you see us drafting or signing? Would you want to see us draft Dallas Turner as an edge rusher? I'm going to be honest. I haven't done too much draft study yet. So I'm not going to throw out a specific name for you at edge or cornerback there. From what I've seen of Verse, broadcast copy, but from what I've seen of Verse, it's awesome. I'm very intrigued there. He won't be on the board, but that guy's awesome. Yeah, in theory, like let's just say first round edge. I'd be happy if they drafted a first round edge. They could use it 100%. I'd maybe prefer they go offense, but totally cool with that play. What about a restructure? Glad someone asked this at the end here. Restructure not on the table. Restructuring is turning salary into long-term guarantees. The Broncos are doing this because they don't want to have long-term guarantees for Russ. So they wouldn't want to do that. The only other option would be Russell Wilson handing back like tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. That ain't happening either. Even more so, you see that Schultz report about the Broncos asking Russ to restructure his deal so that he could keep playing, and he dug his feet in and said no and dragged this process out. I do not see him handing back tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. We are still going, Bree. Like the stream, like it right now. It's yeah, Bree, it's gone long. It's gone long. My GF is going to kill me, but also, yep, that's the Zack Segars way. That is the Zack Segars way. I'll be back on Friday if my girlfriend doesn't kill me for becoming a mute after burning my throat out on this. I don't see any more questions. Thank you, everybody, stopping by. Again, I know I already said it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Making the time is so generous. We're going to be back on Friday, but I don't want to wait for incredible Broncos coverage until Friday. What do you do? Well, you're going to listen to Broncos Country tonight, iHeartRadio, 850 KOA, 7 to 9 p.m. Our very own Bree Maestas. Maybe it's 6 to 9. Bree, tell me if I have those hours wrong. I'm sorry if I do. You got to listen. You got to listen to Bree. That's appointment listening number 1. Appointment listening number 2, Joey and Frankie. You saw them in the chat today. Frankie disagrees with me a lot on the Russell Wilson thing. I don't think the Broncos are going to take as much of a step back as he does. He wants to do a pre-June cut. I really don't want to do a pre-June cut. We learn from different perspectives. Get Frankie's perspectives. They're going to be different than mine. You're going to get a more well-balanced take. If you listen to me and you listen to Frankie, bring back Mario. Mario will be brought back soon. Don't worry about that. Watch The Little Mermaid with Cal in our Discord if you want, and that'll do it. I need to sign out. I'm done reading the comments. Broncos Country tonight is 6 to 9 p.m., 94.1 FM, 8:50 a.m. Again, like 850koa.com also gets you that live stream link. That's how I always listen. That's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. Thank you, everybody. The support really means the world for me. I love getting to geek out about the Broncos with you. Follow me over on Twitter at Zack_Segars. Give Joey and Bree their love. Bye. I'm gone. I gotta bye. See ya.